My name is Daniel, and this happened to me in the fall of 2022 in Charlotte, North Carolina. I was 28 at the time and worked for a small company that repaired payment terminals for retail stores. My job was simple. Whenever a store's checkout system stopped working, I'd drive out, fix it, and move on to the next call. One Thursday evening, I got a service request from a clothing boutique inside one of the city's nicest shopping districts. The place was full of expensive restaurants, jewelry stores, and luxury brands. During the day, it was packed with people, but after closing time, it became surprisingly quiet. I arrived around 7:15 p.m. The repair itself only took about 40 minutes. The store manager thanked me, signed my paperwork, and locked the front doors behind me. By then, almost every business had closed. Instead of walking back through the brightly lit main entrance, I decided to take the shortcut employees used behind the buildings. It connected all the loading docks and parking lots. The manager even said, "It's quicker if your truck's back there." I figured she knew what she was talking about. The backside of the market felt completely different. The fancy storefronts were gone. Instead, there were dumpsters, delivery ramps, brick walls, steel doors, and narrow service roads. A few yellow security lights were mounted on the buildings, but they left long stretches of darkness between them. It wasn't creepy, just empty. I unlocked my work van and was about to leave when I realized I had left my tool bag inside the boutique. I sighed, locked the van again, and walked back toward the rear employee entrance. That's when I noticed someone standing near one of the dumpsters. He wasn't doing anything. He just stood there, hands in his hoodie pocket, facing my direction. I couldn't really see his face because one of the lights behind him was burned out. I figured he was probably homeless or waiting for someone. I grabbed my tool bag, came back outside, and he was gone. I didn't think much about it. On Friday evening, I got another service request. Different store, same shopping district. I laughed when I saw the address. What are the odds? This repair finished even later, almost 9 p.m. The employee exit led into the same service alley. As I walked toward my van, I heard footsteps behind me, not running, just walking, same pace as me. I glanced over my shoulder. Nobody. The sound stopped. I kept walking. A few seconds later, the footsteps started again. I turned around much faster this time. Still nothing. The alley was completely empty. The only movement came from a loose piece of cardboard sliding across the pavement in the wind. I convinced myself the sound had been echoing between the buildings. That seemed reasonable. I drove home. Over the next 2 weeks, I kept getting calls from stores in that district. Apparently, several businesses had upgraded their checkout systems around the same time. I ended up visiting the area 6 different nights. The strange feeling kept getting stronger. Every visit, I'd catch myself looking over my shoulder. Every visit, I'd notice someone standing farther down the alley, never close, never speaking, always gone by the time I looked again. One night, I mentioned it to a security guard. He shrugged. People cut through here all the time. That answer made sense. Still, something felt off. A few days later, I stayed later than usual because a register needed extra parts. By the time I finished, it was after 10 p.m. Rain had started falling, not heavy, just enough to make the pavement shine. I walked behind the building toward my van. Halfway there, I noticed every loading dock door was closed except one. The open door belonged to a furniture store. Inside, the lights were off. The opening looked like a black rectangle. As I passed it, I heard a cough. Someone was inside. I assumed it was an employee. Then I heard another sound, a shoe scraping against concrete, slowly, very slowly, like someone had shifted their weight. I stopped walking. "So, anyone there?" No answer. I stood there for maybe 10 seconds before convincing myself I was being ridiculous. The rain was getting heavier. I hurried to my van. As I unlocked it, I looked toward the loading dock one last time. Someone was standing just inside the darkness. I couldn't see a face, just the outline, watching me. The moment my headlights turned on, the figure stepped backward until it disappeared. I reported it to mall security before leaving. They said they'd check the area. I never found out if they did. The next week, something happened that I still can't explain. I finished another repair around 8:45 p.m. This time my van wouldn't start. Dead battery, perfect. I called roadside assistance. They estimated 45 minutes, so I waited inside the van. The back parking lot was almost empty. Only 2 other vehicles remained, a delivery truck and a black SUV parked near the dumpsters. Its engine wasn't running, its lights were off. About 15 minutes passed. I looked up from my phone. The SUV had moved. It was now parked 3 spaces closer. I hadn't heard it. I figured I simply hadn't noticed. 5 minutes later, it had moved again. Closer, still dark, still silent. I finally stepped out of my van. Nobody was inside. The SUV was empty. That immediately made my stomach drop. There was no way an empty vehicle had moved by itself, unless someone had been driving without headlights. I looked around. Nothing. Just silence. Then I heard footsteps. Behind me, much closer than before. I spun around. A man in a gray hoodie was walking away between 2 buildings. His hands stayed in his pockets. He never looked back. Roadside assistance arrived a few minutes later. I almost told the mechanic everything. Instead, I kept quiet because I knew how crazy it sounded. I avoided evening jobs there after that, for about a month. Then December arrived. Holiday shopping season. Every technician was busy. My supervisor asked if I could handle an emergency repair at a jewelry store. I didn't have much choice. I got there just before closing. The repair went smoothly. The employees left through the front entrance. I headed toward the back parking lot alone. The temperature had dropped below freezing. My breath was visible. As I reached my van, I noticed something tucked under the windshield wiper. A folded receipt. I assumed it was trash. When I opened it, there was handwriting. It simply said, "You always leave around 9. I stared at it for several seconds. Nobody should have known my schedule, not unless they had been watching me for weeks. I immediately called the police. 2 officers arrived within 15 minutes. They searched the area. One officer asked if I had enemies. I laughed. No. The other officer took the receipt as evidence. He admitted it was unsettling, but said there wasn't much they could do without security footage or witnesses. Before leaving, one officer gave me one piece of advice. Don't park back here anymore. I followed that advice. From then on, I parked in the public garage, even if it meant carrying my equipment farther. I thought everything was over. Until 3 weeks later. I received another repair request, same market, different store, middle of the afternoon, broad daylight. As I walked through the public parking garage after finishing the job, I noticed something on the concrete pillar beside my van. Someone had written a single sentence with a black marker. Wrong parking lot. I froze. Nobody else seemed to notice. Families walked past carrying shopping bags. Couples laughed. Everything looked completely normal. I took pictures and called the police again. The writing was gone when an officer arrived less than 30 minutes later. Someone had cleaned it off. The officer believed maintenance workers probably removed it. Maybe they did, maybe they didn't. I never accepted another evening service call to that district. Eventually, my company reassigned those jobs to someone else. About 6 months later, I ran into one of the mall's security guards while grabbing lunch across town. He recognized me immediately. He asked if I still worked those stores. I told him no. He nodded and quietly said, "Probably for the best." I asked him why. He looked around before answering. "We reviewed camera footage after your reports." "What did you find?" He hesitated. "Nothing illegal." That wasn't the answer I expected. He continued. "There was a guy who kept showing up behind the market, same clothes almost every night. He never entered a store, never stole anything, never approached anyone. So why not arrest him?" "Because every time officers arrived, he was already gone." I asked if they ever identified him. The guard shook his head. Then he said something that still bothers me. He always appeared about 10 minutes before you finished work. I never told him what time I usually got off. The police never knew either, so someone had been keeping track of me long before I ever noticed that first man standing beside the dumpster. Even now, if I have to visit that part of Charlotte for work, I leave before sunset. Sometimes I'll drive past the back service road just to see if it still looks the same. It always does. Quiet loading docks, empty alleys, yellow lights. Nothing unusual. But every now and then, when traffic slows enough for me to look toward the dumpsters, I catch myself wondering if there's still someone standing just outside the light, waiting for another worker who thinks the backside of a nice, expensive market is the safest shortcut home.